Welcome back to another episode of A Hunter's Legacy, the only hunting podcast that ditches the pros for the average Joes. This week, we're covering a new state. We're visiting with Boaz out of Idaho. So he is, I would say, a pretty recent father. He's got a couple young boys, married with kids, Army veteran, and glad to be in Idaho instead of Washington. How we doing, man?
Doing good, Mitchell. Doing good. Yeah, definitely glad to be out of Washington.
So what took you from Washington to Idaho? I know we were talking a little bit that you were in Tennessee when you were working in the military a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, it was uh, mainly the cost of living was a big one for us. We like to try and live underneath our means the best we can. And between all the taxation that was going on and where that money was going, it's had some, moral issues there. Kind of made it pretty obvious that, hey, going down to Idaho would be a pretty good option for us. So we've been pretty happy with the move. Found a nice little church out here and everything like that, and just a myriad of people more so that have our same interests than I did in Washington.
So you're a churchgoer.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm new to the church game, trying it out.
Hey, man, it's interesting. There's a lot of dogma in it for sure. Ultimately, Christ is Lord. There is no other way around it. And getting caught in religion is the difference in that. And that's kind of understanding that difference. When I first started attending as a young man, was a good one to learn right away.
Yeah, I'm not a young man when I started. I started when I was 37, but we'll see. I'm just trying to soak it up. I'm not jumping in and like, oh, I'm super religious or whatever. I'm kind of letting it come to me, but have been going to church every Sunday to kind of soak it in.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I think that's one thing that's really interesting about the outdoors world is you talk to any hunter or fisher or camper or whatever, and it's hard for them to deny that there is something bigger than them out there. You know what I mean? You just go outside and there's just something, some presence, some feeling, and it's like, hmm. I wonder if there, is a creator, or if there is something that's larger than me out there, or if it is just me. So
And then just like trying to find the whole meaning of life and it's a big world. Where did it all come from?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So fill us in a little bit more about yourself. So you're in Idaho. We're in the Army for a little bit. So give us a quick couple-minute breakdown of who we are.
Yeah, yeah. So born and raised hunter. I grew up in the sticks in Southwest Washington. My spent most of my time as a kid in the woods. My dad had a decent amount of property, and we were adjacent to some state land and some contracted land we had some use to. And I would just find myself out there all the time. Started hunting at a very young age, about 10 years old, and fell in love with it really quickly. My dad was a kind of guy that would just hunt whatever season was available, was what was the best season that year to hunt. And so I got accustomed to hunting black powder, archery, modern firearm. And then I took a slight break when I did join the army right out of high school, but I still would be out in the woods, obviously, and did some turkey and out in Tennessee for a little bit, and then moved back to Washington when I got out and just picked up right where I left off, really, and really just have stuck with bow hunting since I've been back, which has been great, to be honest. So much more challenging, especially in the Northwest. Out of all the animals I've gotten, most of them have been under 50 yards, and my closest kill to bring home has been with a rifle at 6, but my furthest up until 3 months ago was with a bow at 56. So just really tight area, not anything like Tennessee or now here in Idaho at all. But right now, I'm just enjoying coyote hunting. I've quickly fell in love with coyote hunting. It is such a unique form of hunting to me, anyway, and I've just been really enthralled with it.
What part of Idaho are you in?
Far south, almost as far south as you can get. Still on the 84, but right up against the Sawtooth National Park. So
Yeah, I used to work with a guy, and I can't think of his name, but he's got the decoy dogs, and he's in Idaho. I've never Craig. I'll think of it, but he's in with the Lucky Duck guys.
oh yeah, okay.
Craig Sandy, maybe. Yep, Craig Sandy is the guy's name. I think he does some guide stuff on the dogs or whatnot, but anyways, not to sidetrack too much. So you said your dad was pretty much open to anything and everything. Is he still in Washington?
Yeah, he is born and raised. He's probably from where he was born to where he lives now, 2-hour drive.
And he obviously, well, I shouldn't assume, but he got started hunting maybe when he's a kid. So when you were a young buck, were you tagging along or did you kind of have to sit in the dugout until you're old enough to actually do the hunt yourself with him?
Oh, he was dragging me along as soon as I could walk. Uh, he started hunting out of necessity for his family. They grew up on a dirt poor milk farm, and obviously can't be selling your cattle to produce milk, for food when you should be out there, milking them instead. So they were having to feed themselves through venison and deer and elk primarily. And he'll tell you this story. I was probably 4 years old, and it was late muzzleload elk season. And this was probably one of the second or third times I was out with them that mom would be comfortable letting me go out with them. And we got on some tracks in the snow, and we started walking through the snow. And I could tell that he was really excited, and he could even see these elk right over this little ridge from the road. And I just kept pulling on his pant leg, like, "Hey, can we go back in the truck?" And he looked over the edge right there, and he just saw this really nice 5x5 Rosie, and he was just like, "Well, what do I do? Do I push my kid a little further, or do we go back to the truck, and drive around in the snow some more?" So he decided to go back into the snow. Sorry, to go back to the truck, and so he kind of, not that he hasn't had a lot of elk to his name. I mean, he's 81 years old, been hunting since he's been 9 or 8 or whatever. And so plenty of elk under his belt. But he'll always kind of rub that story around like, "Hey, you cost me that elk one at one time." I'm like, "Well, I was four." So
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, well, I shouldn't say sometimes. Being a dad always comes first. I know it's easy to say, hey, just suck it up or whatever. I don't have any kids. Wish I did, but I'm sure being a father is a little bit different story.
it's really cool. One of my most fond memories used to be a time when uh, I ended up getting this animal I worked really, really hard for, and it was deep in Washington. But of recent, it was me, my oldest boy, and my dad. We were out late season scouting just all together in the truck. And it was just really cool seeing my son and my dad like banter in the car, and they were spotting elk on the hillside. And that's right now, that's my most cherished memory, is just having everyone together in the truck, even though we are just, late season scouting. But just very interesting how that goes. And my boy's turning 4 here soon, and we've been bringing him out in the forest and seeing stuff. He has good little toy binoculars, and he'll still look through and try and find stuff. And it's been a hoot, to say the least. So
How many years do you think you spent following your dad around before you actually got to put a gun to your shoulder?
not long, to be honest. If I was following him around and I was 4 or something like that, I took my hunter safety ed when I was 10, and I went on my first hunt when I was 10. And my first legal hunt was actually really funny. We were right above the house, and we stumbled upon a bear in late August. And my dad's very much a experience by the seat of your pants kind of guy, and never fired a rifle before other than hunter safety. And he's just like, "All right, put the crosshair on the bear behind the shoulder, like we did on the, he pulled out the game laws, and like right there on the bear, that's where you want to aim, pointing with a pen." And we looked 3 days for that bear, didn't find it. But probably 2 years later, I got my first buck though. So I was 12, I think. Yeah.
How old were you when you allegedly shot this bear and couldn't find it?
Yeah, I was about 10. Yeah. It was the first year I got my hunting license, first legal hunt I was able to go on to with, a tag in pocket and everything like that. And, yeah, 10.
And how long were you hunting with your dad before you finally started going out on your own?
About 4 years is kind of a mix. Washington State at the time, you had to be 14 before you could hunt on your own. And that gave me enough years from 4 to 14, 10 years of knowing the area that we were at pretty well. And so he would just end up dropping me off on a ridge above the house because we lived way out in the sticks. I mean, I had an hour-long bus ride to go to school, and I would just walk home, 14 years old. And some nights I'd come home a little late. Mom would be a little worried, but dad was like, he's fine. So there was one time it was a little late. You get a little turned around, and I was trying to track which ridge I was on, and I was one too far over. But uh, yeah, 14 years, and sometimes I'd hunt with my dad after, sometimes I wouldn't. A lot of times he'd just be dropping me off in the woods someplace, and I'd just be walking my way home or hitch a ride home with a friend or some random logger.
Random logger.
Yeah, I'd be winding up a place. I'd chase an animal. Primarily, it'd be an elk, probably, to be honest, because that's what I would really be trying to go for. And I find myself way out further in the woods than I want to. So I would just walk to a local logging site, hitch a ride back with a logger. They drop me off on the road adjacent to my road, and I would just walk the rest of the mile home.
How old are you?
I'm about to turn 28.
Did you have cell phones back then?
No, no, you still don't get service back there either.
I suppose that's a little different than Iowa. You get service everywhere here.
Mm. Yeah, my part of Idaho here, you get some service in the desert and some in the mountains, but it's still not a whole lot. Maybe enough to send a text message or call 911, but that's about it.
Do you have any good memories of whether you're just tagging along with your dad? I know you talked a little bit about the elk that could have been, but is there any defining moments where you kind of knew you were hooked on hunting?
There was this one time I was probably 13, I think, and we were way back in the unit toward Mount St. Helens, even if it kind of that puts a geographic location for some of y'all. And we were hunting this north face of a mountain, and a bear just started creeping over this ridge, and we were probably a mile away, but we saw it with the binoculars. And it's just this black dot moving on this rock shale. And so we started driving over there. I mean, about as fast as we could, was still trying to be safe on the logging roads. And we estimated that the bear would probably be somewhere on the bottom side of that mountain by the time we got there, just off of how it was moving. By the time we got over there, we started sneaking around, and my dad just told me, he's like, "Look, you're old enough, you've been around the woods long enough. I'm just going to let you ride this one out. I'm just going to sit about 50 feet behind you and make sure nothing crazy happens." So I devised this scheme, the best that any 13-year-old could figure out on where I thought the bear would be, and I would just start patiently making my way there because I knew, they got much better scent than we do, much better vision and hearing in some regards. And I ended up sneaking up on this bear, and I got 12 yards away from him. But the area was so steep and so rugged and covered in this shale rock that you'd make any wrong move, and you're probably either sliding down the hill 50 feet to the road, and it probably wouldn't be fun going down, or you're going to lose your chance at this bear.
Or get eaten?
Or, well, they're black bear.
You
Every
never
encounter
know,
I've had,
man. You never
that's
know.
true. That's true. At least every encounter I've had, aside from one, has been pretty pleasant with bear, meaning that they're more afraid of me than I am of them. And I just started carefully unslinging the 243 off my back.
Let's back up for a second.
Sure.
So you're within 12 yards. You telling me that you get to 12 yards and you're getting ready to unsling the gun tells me that you kind of approached and all of a sudden he was there. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah. I came around this set of trees that were on this hillside, and he was just there facing away from me. So I was not expecting him to be there. I was expecting him to be maybe the next vein over, possibly. And my heart did skip a beat for a second, or it froze. I was like, "Oh crap, there he is." Um,
Kind
what
of
do I
like when
do?
you first see him, you question, like, there's no way that you turn and he's 12 yards away. I'm sure your first instinct's like, no way, that's him. Oh, that's him.
Yeah, and the sun was in my eyes too. I was looking toward the sun. It was around noon or so, so it was still higher, but that was just the direction it was all set up at. And I start unslinging the rifle, and as I, try and gently push the safety off, I end up slipping and it clicks on the receiver, and the bear just peeks its head up and starts bolting up the hill. Uh, and as it's trying to run away, it skips through a couple of trees, and it's maybe only 20 yards away, but it gives me a good broadside as it's moving. And I thought, well, this is the only shot I'm going to get. And I make another shot on it, and we spend the next 2 or 3 days again looking for it. So I've had, at this point now, two bear encounters in my life at under 13 years of age. And no recoveries on them apparently. But the other thing too is we didn't find any blood, adrenaline with the bad footing, the steep elevation, and I mean very steep. Uh, Probably just ended up missing him anyway because 2 weeks later I got my deer right in the heart, dropped him, no issues. So I'm gonna
You're
blame it
saying
on
it's not the gun.
I'm saying, well, so I'm a 13-year-old at this portion, experience, but also elevation. I mean, I was probably the whole entire time, one bad footing from just sliding down that rock face the whole entire time. So who knows?
I'm sure some of those hunts will haunt you forever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think about it from time to time. I've had, two nice opportunity at bear in my life thus far. Thankful for it, that the way they happened.
Say that again. You've had 2 opportunities?
Yeah, at this portion, at 13, two opportunities for bear. One, my first hunt when I was 10, and now at 13, 3 years later. And no bear. I got no bear to my name right now. So,
You haven't shot a bear?
well, I have shot bear. I just haven't brought any home.
Okay.
Yeah, haven't brought any home. My dad gives me a hard time because by the time he was 13, he's already brought two home. So I'm 0 for 2. But we make it a little bit of a game. Not that it's a competition by any means. We understand that his circumstance was a little bit different than mine, and there was also no Department of Fish and Wildlife when he was a kid either. So
I just wanna make sure I'm understanding this right. I understand, like, when you're younger, you missed 2. Have you not killed a bear yet?
correct. Yeah, no
That's
bear
what
to
I thought you were
Boaz's name.
saying. Oh, man. 15 years later, and you still haven't sealed the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I've been focused mainly on deer. I've been enjoying deer hunting for a number of years, and elk too. Elk have been really fun. I love chasing elk, especially in late season. It's been real fun. So
Did you learn anything from those moments in case you ever do go bear hunting again?
practice elevation. Elevation's
How
huge on
much does
those.
elevation matter at 12 yards, man?
Well, I feel like it kind of does when you're not managing your emotions right. That's probably the
Okay.
other lesson learned. The other lesson learned in that portion. I feel like with my experiences as an adult now, being in the army, yeah, I feel like I got the emotional thing pretty well tied in for managing that adrenaline. 12 yards, 20 yards. I know with a bow, it matters. It can matter a lot for how steep it was. Rifle, but those are my lessons learned from that. Yeah, manage your emotions and to make sure you're not, totally taking all of it out on yourself, making sure you know your equipment too.
And how did those mistakes transfer to the hunter you are today?
Hmm. Well, like to say I have a pretty good take home ratio now. Um,
Better than
as
0
is
for
the
2?
definitely better than 0 for 2. Yeah, I'm on 14 deer now, which is pretty nice. A couple elk to my name, and a handful of coyote too. And everything I've hit or shot at aside from one deer has eluded me aside from those bear. So high percentage of taking something home.
And I can't remember if it was before the podcast or not, but now you're archery only. So when you're young, it sounded like mostly gun, but how did you evolve to archery only?
Well, even my adolescence, I started switching to archery pretty quickly. When I was 15, was my first year I was able, like, strong enough to pull back a bow at legal poundage for Washington, which I think is 45 or 40 pounds. I don't remember exactly for the time, but we hit legal poundage. And youth get all kinds of crazy tags for archery in Washington if as long as you put in for them. And I was able to draw some years 2 tags on average. I think one year I even got 3 tags. So I ended up stacking animals my sophomore, my junior, and senior year. One year I got 3 animals. I got my cow and I got 2 bucks that one year alone for hunting, and I've just enjoyed it. Washington's inherently tight quarters, as I mentioned prior, but the better season's archery for right there. You get the rut, and you get just the better weather. I think, in my opinion, I like hunting in the rain, and I like dealing with less people in the woods. So, especially on public land. So that's the biggest benefit for archery, at least in that part of Washington, to me.
And if you're archery hunting out there, is it a lot of spot and stalk? I don't imagine it's a lot of tree stand hunting, is it?
I have never seen a tree stand in that, at least my part of Washington. I know there's guys that do it. I don't really know their success, but it is very much, I see something, you're putting a hunt on right away, or you're even just walking the login roads if you're really either don't know what to do that day, you've had some bad stalks. So like, I'm just going to go walk some roads for a little bit, because there's just login roads all over in that part of the country.
And as you've gotten older hunting, describe to me like your hunting mentality. So as a kid, probably just want to be out there with dad. Did you ever transform into, let's say, a trophy hunter where maybe you're watching TV shows and all you wanted to do is kill a giant buck?
I think I'm in that transition right now, Mitchell. I am primarily a meat in the freezer kind of guy. That's my number one thing. I just thoroughly enjoy eating venison. It's obviously very healthy for you. It's obviously not really a cheap means of meat by any means. After you talk about, gear and tags and everything like that, maybe if you are really disciplined, you only do one method of hunting. Maybe by a couple years down the road, then maybe it could be. But as for right now, my mentality probably is just having success and doing so in a way that's challenging to me, but still a balance of at least being somewhat safe. Before, very much a binocular glass kind of guy. Now I'm, hey, where's the thickest, nastiest straw I can find? I'm going to go stalk that today. And then if I can't get an animal bumped out of there, I'm going to go to the next nastiest draw and go down that. And I'll probably find something in that system.
Did you go through a stage where all you wanted to do was kill the biggest animal possible? You didn't care about venison or just the escape from reality?
No, not yet. I haven't hit that yet. Maybe with coyotes. I've been eyeballing a couple I've been seeing. I haven't been able to get them close enough to my lethal range yet for only shooting 5.56 out of it. But there's a couple I've eyeballed, and that's maybe my niche in there. I was with a hunt earlier this year with some friends, and one of the guys in our party, he shot a massive 6.6 Rocky elk. I mean, we could barely put our hands around the base of his antlers. They were so big around. And seeing that was just incredible. I've never seen a bull that big before in my life. But I think that might have started that idea of getting something that is, very much wall mountable, for lack of better terms.
If you haven't hit it yet, you probably won't. Most people go through it. I mean, some people are that way, but a lot of younger hunters, late teens, early 20s, they kind of go through that ego stage where they just want to kill a bigger deer than everybody else.
Yeah, I've had a couple friends like that. Just because I am a younger guy, and some of the people I still hunt with or hunt adjacent to that are the same age as me. Not a lot of us are like that. It's mainly just being outside, having a good time, trying to steward that resource that's been given to us, and then just put something in the freezer. Obviously, I'm not trying to just say the if it's brown, it's down mentality. It's not exactly what we're saying either. uh, but mature animal that's gone through a couple of lifespans, and yeah, right, that's something I'd take home today.
And what's your main purpose in hunting? Is it strictly filling the freezer?
I wouldn't say just one portion of it. Filling the freezer is part of it. I would say keeping myself physically active is another one, and other portions being in the Lord's creation, and probably the last one is keeping my skills honed. um, I feel like the ability to provide for yourself and have that skill set and take care of yourself when you're out in the woods, like, hey, shelter, fires, medical stuff, the ability to just survey the land and figure out how to navigate across it are all very underrated skills to have.
100%, man. What do you do for work now?
I do financial consulting as a day job. So I kind of have a background a little bit to, help overcome my young face appearance. Like, hey, I have books. I have some experience with the military and credibility there potentially. But yeah, I do that for a day job.
Glasses help too.
Glasses help a little bit. They're actually just blue glasses because I look at a screen when I'm not out in the woods. So having that LED being a little more comforting to my eyes is nice.
The point I was getting at, asking what you do for a day job, and I think people underestimate the power that being out in the woods provides as like an escape to reality. Do you feel like when you're out there, you can just kind of ditch all responsibilities and all the stress and just kind of let everything go?
But yeah, the only thing or only way you're gonna contact me in the woods is if you're my wife calling me. That's it. Everyone else gets muted, everything gets muted. Obviously, I'll still use my phone for, like, maybe Onyx or maybe I'm running my Predator call through it or something like that, but I don't care. I'm out there reading the wind. I'm trying to see where the sun is. I'm paying attention to the time of day, doing things that I think are gonna let my hair go down, and just chill out. Uh, I get super cabin feverish when I sit in this office all day, just looking through numbers and doing these other things. It's like, well, they're important things. By all means, providing for your family is important. Don't get me wrong. But taking care of your mental psyche is also good too.
Then, do you live in town or in the country?
I live just inside of city limits for my city where I'm at now. It being southern Idaho, everything is farmer based. I got cornfields to the left and right of my property, and I got a couple of schools just next to me as well. But it's just a small little podunk town.
But you can't, after a long, stressful day, just walk out your back door and through the woods and get out of the house a little bit.
Walking, no, but 30 minutes. Yeah, 30-minute drive. I'm out there in the desert or out in the mountains, so I'm pretty happy with that.
How do you think your approach to hunting is going to change in the next 5 years? Specifically, referring to a couple of young boys that sound like are having a pretty good time tonight.
I think the bigger one with that, honestly, is my wife's getting interested too. She sees the smile that's on my face, and she's like, "You have really bad RBF," and it typically lasts at home a lot. Not that I, try and be mean or anything like that. I just have RBF, and trying to get her involved is, I think, probably going to be the more fun question because she grew up city slicker, for lack of better terms, downtown Vegas.
Downtown
And
Vegas?
downtown Vegas,
Oh my gosh.
moved to Southwest Washington during grade school. That's how we met, high school sweethearts. Uh, and she's been enjoying when we go out. We'll go out scouting. We'll bring some food with us, obviously, some amenities to make it a little more pleasant for everyone. But
iPads for the kids.
no, no, no. They get the window rolled down. That's what they get. So they get the window rolled down and maybe some crackers. That's how we keep them coerced is via food. uh,
Yeah, man.
but it is fun. This last year I ended up hurting my leg a little bit early archery season because the unit I was in was bicycle or walk in. And I rode too many miles too quickly in a 3-day span, and I pulled my hamstring early season. So we went and drove to the other side of the state where I could still hunt, but we hunted out of the truck, as a compensation for that. And it was great just walking down some little ATV trails with my boy. Mom stayed back with the youngest one, and then we would just alternate stuff like that. And it was fun, and just having that patience and that ability to just kind of help steward that next generation slowly and do so in a way that's going to be encouraging for them to want to take on the same seemingly daunting challenge. I mean, for us, it's like it is really easy. Just go out in the woods. We know exactly what we need to do. But when society today, especially, is so counterintuitive to anything revolving self reliance and self sufficiency, especially when it is toward hunting. I mean, look at what's going on in Oregon right now. They're pushing through a bill that's going to potentially ban all hunting and fishing in Oregon right now. Oregon of all places, you wouldn't believe, but they are. I want to make sure that my boys are being aware of those things that are going on because, to me, in my opinion, they have a right to this land just like everyone else does, and especially public land. I mean, I'm wearing my public lands equal freedom shirt right now, uh, and making sure that they know that's available for them, is huge. Whether they decide to full on, take on hunting in their adulthood, yeah, that's their choice. But at least they know it's there. That's the big one for me.
Do you think as they get older, I know you mentioned you're kind of enjoying getting your wife into it, but as they get older, do you think it's going to turn or shift your priorities of you wanting to get out there and harvest an animal to just watching them harvest animals under your wing?
I think a bit of both. Primarily, though, I love seeing other people succeed. I feel, I'll say, you know, content with what I have. I would love to, go on more hunts and, get a couple more animals to my name, especially ones that I've never gotten before, for the sake of the challenge, to include bear.
Yeah.
uh, and a nice bull elk would be appreciable, and maybe even a ram too, in the future. That's definitely one of my bucket list animals is a nice ram. But um, seeing other people succeed is huge. And whether that's fishing, whether that's a, hey, 4 or 5 day backcountry hunt, all self sustaining, you just drove in or walked in or flew in, but you're doing everything else yourself, then that's something to be, pretty impressed upon, in my opinion. So,
Do you think the boys are starting to get to the age where you can tell they're going to start picking up hunting? Maybe they get excited when they see a dead animal or a mount on the wall.
yeah, I mean, when I was doing my early season archery hunt, I got my buck last day, last day of the season, of course. And my oldest, he was just so curious by, this animal that was hanging. And we were just explaining to him, and me and my dad were, as we're processing it and just explaining everything we're doing. And he was just sitting there on the chair, just mesmerized, for lack of better terms. And I think he'll be pretty enticed. One thing I'll do a lot with my oldest right now is when we go archery shooting, about once every week right now because it's the winter. But we'll go out to the range and he'll just sit there by the side. He'll pull up his little kid chair and plop it down to me, and I'll just shoot arrows. And he'll sit there with his binoculars and, watch. And I'll tell him, hey, I'm going to shoot this target. And he sees the arrow go and land. He's like, oh, dad, you hit it. Like, yeah, I hit it, dude. So we'll sit maybe 30, 40 minutes out there. I'll shoot a couple dozen and like, all right, it's good enough to stay loose, loose enough for the off season. And uh, it's just cool sharing that experience, getting someone interested.
Oh, I'm sure, man. Can he sit still for that long?
He does a okay job. He'll end up, if he gets bored, he's a pretty good rock stacker. So he'll just take a bunch of pebbles and start piling them together. And I'm like, cool, playing in the dirt. That's great. So
Yep. So you talked about having to travel to hunt on a different part of the state so you could get around when you're injured. Kind of walk through and kind of describe for listeners what you're dealing with out there in terms of terrain. So let's start with Washington. I'm curious to hear what things were like out in Washington.
yeah, so my part of Washington, I grew up on the western side of the Cascades. So that's considered coastal plains, coastal region for hunting. I'm where I hunted specifically was no more than an hour and a half from the coast itself, but anything west of the Cascades is more or less coastal. And it's a weird blend of regions. You have the foothills slash being in the Cascades, which is just mountainous, rugged terrain. Some grades of hills are 20, 30, 40% grade. And the vegetation is just so thick in that area. You don't have much of a shooting alley, if anything. There, like I said before, there's a lot of logging roads in most places and state land access. So you have that to your benefit. But some units, depending on how they're managed, are walk-in only, bicycle only, primitive method of transportation. Some are, hey, if you get the permit for it, you can drive in or use your ATV. And it just depends on what that is. When I had to go a little more toward the coast after I pulled my hamstring from riding too many miles up and down the hill, it was a little more swamp based, just because it levels out a little bit more and there's more sand and mud in that area. And I would say thicker, thicker than the mountain region, and it poses its own challenges between, just fields and fields of huge Himalaya blackberries, which have the thistles, I mean, as big as your thumb, just sticking out, and they snag and rip your clothing. They'll even rip like 1 inch tubular nylon off of your backpack and just cut that up. So having decent equipment goes a long way, if it makes sense for you, because it's just going to get shredded. But
So on the west side of the mountains are the Cascades kind of where, like, if you're on this side of the mountain, you get rain all the time. If you're on this side of the mountain, you don't get any rain?
exactly, yeah. W- Washington cliche, like everyone thinks it's all green. Only half of it's green. The western half is green. The eastern half, highland desert, farm fields as far as the eye can see. Maybe some rolling hills at best, but nothing more than what you're going to see if you were maybe in the general Appalachian region of the country.
So how often did it rain on the western side of the Cascades?
We got about, on the record book, 200 to 220 days of rain a day. Sorry, 200 to 220 days it rained out of the 365-day
Oh my
year.
god.
So 2/3 of the year, gray, gloomy skies with a drizzle, at least.
Probably didn't get very hot.
No, not really. There might be 1 week in August/July it gets a little toasty, maybe high 90s, maybe 100 for 1 or 2 days out of the year, but you're looking at a moist 56 degrees year-round long.
Minus the rain every day. I like the temperatures.
The rain, I've come to really enjoy it. It makes, for me and my style of hunting, very optimal, especially when you're beating through the brush. The rain definitely helps mask that a little bit, the noise especially. And less people are out there when it's raining really hard. They don't want to be out in the woods, even if they are just driving around in their trucks. uh, I've come to enjoy it a lot.
I can see how it'd be advantageous for hunting and whatnot, being able to sneak up, but in general, just get kind of annoying having to keep everything just around home. Like, stuff needs to stay dry and all that stuff.
Yeah, you definitely become a master of managing your equipment for sure. But for me, it was no different than when I was in the army. You go out on a week long field exercise, you got to manage all your stuff when you're in. And I've already been doing this since I've been 10. So it was really easy for me to stay dry and keep warm and know how to layer your clothing. And, when do I wear my thermals? When do I don't? Oh, I'm going to walk for the next 5 miles. Probably shouldn't have my thermals on, so I sweat through them. So that kind of deal.
Okay, so where you grew up, really wet, damp, always raining. What about where you're at now in Idaho?
Probably the exact opposite. Even in the winter, it's sunny, it's still cold. We supposedly are supposed to get a lot of snow every year. This year's been a fluke for a lot of states in the region that I'm in. But yeah, 5 feet on snow is very common with ice and snow drifts of 10 feet. The summer, you're looking at 100 degrees for months sometimes, just blaring heat. Uh, so definitely having a variety of skills to be able to combat the hot weather and cold weather is going to be huge in that regard. And the distances you can see miles and miles and miles just from standing on a little 1 inch hump, because it is pretty flat in some areas. There's a lot of cutouts here and there, but aside from that, I mean, you want to make sure that you have a totally different aspect than like what I said earlier, beating through the nastiest straw you can find, the completely opposite hunting style.
Are you hunting the same animals now? What were you hunting in Washington compared to now?
Blacktail deer and Roosevelt elk, with the occasional black bear or coyote thrown in there. Now, whitetail deer, Rocky Mountain elk, occasional bear and coyote thrown in there. and some antelope. I would love to get on some antelope soon enough, but uh, the rifle tags are pretty hard to get out here. Archery, anyone can have them because it's antelope. No one's very few people pull an antelope tag with a bow out here.
What's the difference between Roosevelt and Rocky Mountain elk?
A bit of the size and their pattern, to some degree. Roosevelt elk are going to be more native to northern Oregon and Washington, part of Canada. They're going to be a little bit, in terms of body, to my understanding, a little bit bigger. Their antlers going to be a little smaller though, because terrain is going to be a little more tough. Rockies though, they're going to be a little smaller in body, depending on age and everything like that. But their antlers can be a little bit bigger. So there are, population wise though, hundreds of thousands more Rockies than there are Rosies, and their
Okay.
behaviors are very, very different too. You bump a Roosevelt elk, it's just going to circle back around that ridge, and you'll probably pick it back up later in about 20 minutes if you're trying to clover leaf it, is what I like to call it. But a Rocky, if you bump that Rocky, it's 4 or 5 ridges over. So you probably won't see it again that day, especially if you're an archery hunter.
Just think there's different pressure levels?
Hard to say. I think it's just the environment at the end of the day, just different environments. Obviously, there's a lot of vegetation no matter where you go, but it's just what that ecosystem can support. I definitely feel like management for most states that I've hunted in have been pretty decent. Uh, that can always be subjective, of course, but I just feel like it's just what the ecosystems can supply in conjunction with what hunters can be successful or not successful in.
And what about blacktail deer? I've never been exposed to them. Obviously, you read about them and whatnot. How much different are they than a whitetail deer?
I have very little experience hunting whitetail, so that's my disclosure there. Obviously, when I was in Tennessee, I had a lot of general exposure to them. We'd be out training in the back 40 a base, which is like the training area in the woods, and we'd see them a lot, and I would kind of interact with them the best I could while still trying to participate in training, of course. But this guy right here is actually my first whitetail that I got this last year up in northern Idaho, and I think the behaviorism is easily said as one's a little more curious, one's a little more skittish. And blacktail, at least in the area I'm in, and I think it's just mainly because of pressure, they see you, they're gone. They're not going to
Really?
pay any attention to you. They're just like, oh, that there's someone there. I'm out. They hear a twig break. I've been glassing deer before at a far enough distance away, and you see a stick fall from it freezing or something like that. That stick hits the ground. They're gone.
They're a lot harder to kill.
I would say maybe. I've been hunting blacktail my whole entire life, so for me, I know the mannerisms. I know how to find them on the map, uh, what they need, their general cycles. So it's been pretty easy for me to find them. And the active years I have been hunting in Washington, I fill my deer tag every year. But this was my first experience with whitetail. I did fill my whitetail, obviously, but just a different circumstance in general. So
Yeah, it would be neat to experience the different species of deer in the US. So I've only hunted whitetail. Mule deer would be pretty cool. Blacktail would be pretty cool. They don't get very big, do they?
no, no. Uh, their antlers especially have a weird growing pattern to my understanding. They just get girthier. They might grow spurs, they may not, to my understanding. So we've seen a couple friends of mine get some really mature blacktails, and you can tell they're mature by the face, by the body, and just the girth of the antlers. But it was still just a 3 by 3.
Okay. Yeah, it's fascinating to hear about different species of deer. Like everybody knows mule deer and whitetail, but I don't think many people pay much attention to the blacktail.
Yeah, they're their own critter. At my area too, and because I have both meats in my freezer right now, I I have become a whitetail fan just off of the meat alone. I got a little bit more of it. I think the animals that I got this year were both kind of around the same age, and just a little bit more fatty. My wife likes it a little bit more than blacktail, so glad there's whitetail in the area, glad there's mule deer in the area. So it's more things to help arm the, hey, let's go out and try and get one of these argument.
If you could pick one of the three, you can only hunt one the rest of your life, which one would it be?
I don't have enough information to give you the answer on that one, Mitchell. Comfort is blacktail. I have been impressed with whitetail thus far. And I've had a small experience also with mule deer too, because the area I was in was a any deer unit. So we spent some time on mules, we spent some time on whitetail, and obviously ended up being more successful with whitetail. So
Okay, let me rephrase that. If you could pick one, you get to shoot a booner of one of the three, which one would it be?
that'd be a mule then.
You think so?
Yeah, I think the antlers on a mule are just very unique, very uh, characteristic of what I kind of think is going to be like a prime animal. Obviously, I've seen some crazy whitetail antlers, and the crown that some animals have are just so like that. I think are just so cool. But for me, it's the mule deer really hits it home though.
It's a completely different style of hunting too than if you were to come hunt in Iowa, you're either in a tower blind, ground blind, or tree stand. There are people that do the spot and stalk, but a majority of the people are going to be elevated if they have a
Yeah.
choice.
I think that's probably what draws me to mule deer and wanting to learn more about them in the future is because of the nature of how you have to pursue them. I'm very much a, hey, let's get our feet dirty, bring a spare change of socks, let's go get after it kind of guy, and hopefully don't fall off a rock face at the same time.
You mentioned public a couple times. Is that all you're hunting out west?
For the most part, yeah. Idaho, you got public land everywhere. Obviously, there's gonna be some farm fields here and there. So if you get in good with a farmer, you can get in some extra land here and there. And the bargain that I have with a couple pending right now is, hey, let me shoot some coyotes off your land, and then maybe you can get me some a couple days on your property. So maybe that might work out, maybe not. But Washington is a little bit more unique. There's obviously a lot of public land out there as well, but there is a large timber farming presence in there, and the timber farmers do not have to let you on their land to go hunt. However, a lot of them do out of courtesy, but now in the past couple of years, it's become permitted via random raffle to get access. So it's technically private, but anyone can get onto it as long as they, are on their computer at X date and time and spend the 50 to whatever dollar amount it is to get on there. But then you have access most year round, and you can even end up getting a couple cord of wood out of it too if you need the wood.
What percentage of the ground you hunt is public versus private?
I would say this last year, maybe 80% public, and then the other 20% was that permitted area.
What are some of the biggest challenges you have of hunting public? Around Iowa or in the Midwest, the public pieces are so small. They might be 40 acres, they might be a couple hundred, but there's always a couple vehicles parked in the lane. Is that the same thing you're seeing out there?
If you block public roadways like deliberately and you're just leaving your truck in the middle of the road, that's you're getting that thing towed.
I mean, but there's
uh,
still like entryways with little
There's still
parking
entryways, of
lots.
course. There, I think one of the smallest public plots I hunted this year was 20,000 acres, maybe. You're going to find all kinds of people out there from weekend ATVers, motocross guys, campers, especially in the Pacific Northwest, campers galore, right? But then you're going to just find some yahoos too, to be honest. They're for one of the areas I'd hunt in. There's a general Facebook page you can join, about just kind of updates and access, and like fire requirements is a big one out there. Having fire gear on you, like an extinguisher, Polsky shovel, or an axe or something like that.
I'm assuming this is in Idaho, not Washington, where you're at.
Both, both,
Really?
yeah. Um, and you join the page to kind of have any current events, because maybe some law enforcement guy might get on there like, hey, like so and so sheriff department, we noticed this trend, hey, don't be a jerk and ruin this for everyone else type deal. Like dumping trash is a big one. Uh, but those yahoos, they might be the guys that, hey, the twig breaks and they're just making sound shots type deal. Like another reason why I don't really hunt rifle seasons, to be honest, as part of that. Um, and you might get guys that think they're more entitled to a certain square piece of land than you are or anyone else. But I still pay taxes. I've and to say I'm not more entitled than anyone. I've at least done some service to the country. Like I feel like I can still hunt here. Like I'm going to be courteous. You were here first. I'll give you your space. But when you leave, I might jump in there. And some guys I've even seen cut trees down on through roads to try and deter people from getting in access.
How big are these pieces?
20, 30, 40,000 square acres, more even.
Whew, that's big.
Some of it you can hunt depending on the conditions of the roadway from your truck. You can just drive through, uh, park at a pull off area and go walk in whatever you want to go specifically. You could park at a cat road. It's a dead end, long dead end road that's maybe a couple miles long. You pull on the part, and it's kind of then assumed if you know that that's a cat road, then you can just leave that alone. That guy has that cat road till his truck's gone. That's kind of the public courtesy there to that person. And sometimes you end up walking in on someone's stock. It's just what happens. And you'd be like, all right, sorry, friend, and you just casually back up, walk away, try and be as, cordial as you can and give them back their area. And then, well, I know they've been there for a couple hours, so I know where the animals probably aren't then.
Yo, do you run into a lot of people out there hunting the public?
Depending on the season, yes. Early archery, deer, elk, maybe a good amount of elk hunters. Deer hunters, not too many. During the weekday, everyone's got work for the most part, but modern firearm elk season, it is like a hornet's nest. It is, you can't go sometimes, even on these huge parcels of land, maybe 5 minutes without seeing another truck parked or driving, someone walking. It is populated, to say the least. And that's when I kind of get bored in the middle of season because I'm between early and late season. So I'll just grab my rifle and I'll do bear hunting. I'll be hunting the creek bottoms in that time. And that's the only place you can find peace from the people.
Do you feel like safety is an issue if there's that many people out there rifle hunting?
Not necessarily. I know I said there's some yahoos that do some sound shots here and there, and then you get
What do you mean by sound shot?
they hear a break in the woods, like a stick, and they just literally fire a random round in that direction, thinking they'll scare off the animal to then pursue it afterwards.
So let's back up for a second. Let's go into more detail here. They think a stick breaks, so they assume it's an animal. They fire off a round. And what's their goal?
Potentially, then the sound will then confirm to them that it's an animal, and then they can pursue it from there.
Okay,
It,
so they hear stick break, they shoot something in the air, and they're hoping they can see the animal take off running.
or they even make a shot in the direction of which they think something made a sound.
But their goal is to see the animal visually run.
Yeah, more or less. It doesn't make much sense to me, but I've seen it. Other people have also reported it. Um, yeah.
What if it's a person breaking a stick?
Yes, that's the easiest argument is what if it's a person that happened to just bump into you in the woods? It happens. I've done it plenty of times during archery season. I there's not much thought process I have in that, to be honest. Like you would think it's common sense not to do that.
Yeah. You mentioned some yahoos out there. What's the general culture like of hunters out there? Is there like hunting community, or is it just so big that everybody kind of keeps to themselves?
I would say there is a pretty strong hunting community in Washington and Oregon and obviously Idaho too, but Washington specifically. I I've been hunting with more or less the same group of people since high school. They all have their own other groups that are a part of too. And then when you're out there in the woods, you see all the different camps set up at different rock pits, and people share locations with everyone. And it is really supportive for the most part, and people just want to spend time outside. But there's always going to be those few exceptions, people that are, doing things in the woods that they shouldn't, like drinking and driving in the woods. Like you are bingo card, put it on, it'll probably get scratched off at least once in a season.
Does anybody get shot out there?
I don't remember the numbers. Very few casualties uh, hunting. It sounds a little crazy. You see some stuff, but it's kind of in some ways the good old boy system. You just been doing it for such a long time. I know what I'm doing. Mentality. Yeah, there's been some accidents here and there, but there's always going to be an accident. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't not be doing stuff at the same time too.
You talked about this a little bit earlier, where people kind of turn into, lack of a better term, dickheads when they think you're encroaching on your space. Is that pretty common out there if somebody's parked in like an entryway, like the common courtesy is don't park there?
I've been seeing it more and more the last couple of years, people being a little more entitled to what they think is theirs versus sharing the public land, sharing the opportunity. I've parked my rig. I've even like when I bicycled in, I leave my bike fairly obviously located on the start of the cat road, and people still walk in behind me. And that's like, well, you came in behind me. I don't really care. I would have liked to hunt my way back too, because that's still an option as well. But yeah, the last couple of years, it has just become more of like a glamour title, like, hey, I'm a hunter, or like a symbol of status for some reason. It's like, well, sure, I guess, but like I'm mainly just doing this for like me and putting some meat on the table and taking care of myself in those other ways that my day job and being a dad and father can't.
Have you had any rough encounters with other hunters?
I've had some general experiences that have been pretty okay. I've seen a pretty bad altercation from across a ridge. It was a late elk season modern firearm, and this truck ended up like kind of pushing another truck, not really off the road, but they ended up hitting bumpers. And it was a long straight stretch road because I know what road it is. And like you saw that dude for 400 meters and you're going 20 miles an hour. You had plenty of time, but because they were stopped on their truck looking at something with their binoculars, they probably got a little impatient and like, hey, I'm gonna let this guy know I'm here. And touching bumpers on your truck is like, why? It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
It was just a friendly poke, or was he like ramming him?
I could hear some yelling across the canyon.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm not trying to deter people either from going out there. It kind of, I'm not trying to paint a bad picture either. But I've been out there a lot, to say the least, and you end up just seeing some stuff you probably shouldn't, or you end up just kind of have to see in one way or another, I guess. But for the most part, everything's been pretty good. Even my seldom encounters with the guys in green, the game wardens, have been pretty decent too. Aside from the one time I went clam digging and they counted all my oysters with uh, gloves with the non nitrile gloves, and then it ruins all your oysters. That was the one time I was a little upset. But
Tell me more about this.
uh, my family, we love doing clam digging in the springtime when there's not much of a spring hunting season, and at least for our history of hunting, I know there's spring bear in some parts, like mainly Oregon. I'm pretty sure Washington doesn't do spring bear anymore, and so we do clam digging. You go to the beach, get up there at 4 in the morning, and you're getting razor clams, you're getting steamers and oysters. Got to buy the appropriate licenses for that, and everything, of course. And you're allowed X amount of clams per person as long as you're able to get them yourself. And so this one time we had three truck full of people, so we had, sorry, yeah, three trucks full of people. So we had like 15, 14 people with us, all family and some friends. all going out clamming. It was a really nice day. The surf was really good, and we were getting done getting oysters. That's the last thing we do. And the game warden shows up and he wants to count all of our clams. And we just asked him like, "Hey, if you have nitrile gloves, can you please use them? Because that the oysters are really really sensitive." And he had like the old school like powdered gloves that that just smell and reek of rubber. Anything they touch smells of rubber after. And he's like, "Nope, I have to individually touch each one." That's what he said. And I was like, "Well, please don't. Like, we will lay out every one seldomly by itself on the back of all of our tailgates, and you can see all the limits. We'll not, we want to make sure that you have a good time doing this. We want to make sure we can maintain all of our shellfish." But he insisted on touching every single clam and the oysters because of how they are. You can't leave them in the shell. You got to shuck them, meaning you got to leave the shell on the beach, and you bring the guts, for lack of better terms, the meat in a little. We use pickle jars, and he had to touch every single one, and you drive home after an hour of them sloshing around all touched in latex. Well, they all smell and taste like latex now.
You think they would know better.
That was the only bad encounter. I've had plenty of other good encounters, but that was my one bad encounter with Department of Fish and Wildlife. So
Maybe he was just having a bad day.
maybe we try to make it as best we could. We give them the benefit of the doubt. For the most part, though, the whole engagement did go pretty well, which was good. But aside from the oysters, which was sad because most people like oysters.
Not me, man, not me. Allergic to shellfish.
Well, then clam digging's probably not for you then, Mitchell.
I'd watch you do it.
It's fun, especially getting razors. They're digging down in the sand. You gotta try and dig with a shovel or a clam gun the best you can, and not crack the thing.
Clam
Uh,
gun.
yeah, it's just a big tube with a hole on the top. You push it in the ground. You use suction by putting your hole in the top of the gun, and you just pull all this column of sand up, and you just shake it out. And then you kick the pile of sand to see if your razor clam's in there. Then you're probably, like, "Oh, I didn't get it, so I got to put your gun back down in the same hole and try on your second take, and hopefully you get your razor clam that second take. If you don't get it by your second take, it's probably gone." So
How do you even know where to look?
there's these little divots in the sand, and they're the razor clams make a special divot that's unique to them. Or if you're doing it in the surf, they make like little V's because that's where their neck is because they're filter feeding. And then you just put your gun in, aim the bottom slightly toward the sea because they slightly dig toward the sea, and you just start shaking that clam gun and get them out. So you can also use a shovel too, which is pretty fun. Just make sure when you put your hand in there, you don't get cut by the razor because they will cut you pretty good.
Wonder why they call him Razor.
Yeah, I've cut myself a couple times. It happens, but it's a fun experience.
Well, you're the first clammer we've had on this podcast.
Well, there we go. That's part of it. I think I grew up because my dad was on a dirt poor farm. My mom was also on a dirt poor farm too, but in the Philippines. Like, hey, we're using every resource available to us, and so we spend a whole day, on what is it, like $15 for a clam license and some gas, and you can get basically 20 meals out of clams for that experience. Between everyone that's going out, that's a good use of your time. That's a good skill to have, and learning how to just process another resource and also being outside. Totally worth it.
How many clams do you have for 20 meals?
Not a lot. I think I know the numbers have changed over the last couple of years, and it's been a couple since I've been. I think you can get up to 18 razor clams, which I only eat maybe 4 a meal because they are pretty filling. Steamers,
Per
you can
person?
get, yeah, per person. You can get 40 steamers, which are those buttered clams you kind of get at the restaurant sometimes. They're also called manillas too. And I can eat maybe 20, and that's a good meal for me. And oysters, like 3 or 4. And I think you can have 15 oysters. Check your game laws, though. Don't quote Boaz. So you can get for almost a whole uh, set of 5 or 6 meals just out of one outing, and if you got a myriad of people going out, some people don't like oysters, some people don't like razors. So then you just shuffle your limits after you get home and you cook it and you just share.
You have to shuck them all there?
The oysters, yeah. The razors and the steamers, you can bring the shells home, but the oysters, you got to leave them in the dirt because it helps promote the next generation of oysters, is what the Department of Fish and Wildlife says. So, all right, that's fine. You just get a butter knife and like a leather glove on your left hand if you're a righty, and you just basically pry them open after you figure out how to scrape them apart. Put the meat in the pickle jar that you cleaned out, and just stick the shell in the dirt and get the next one.
Are they pretty hard to pry open?
No, not at all. There's technique to it. When you first start, you're gonna end up probably breaking a few shells, but when you scrape the side, you just find where the seam is, kind of like the seam on a page for a book, and then you just take that butter knife and you just flip open and skim the top part of the shell. You pull it out, put it in, and skim the bottom part of the shell, and that separates all the muscles that holds that shell together. And then you can just literally take your fingers and pop it right open.
Really?
Yeah, maybe 1 minute. 1 minute, you can have a whole two or three oysters done.
But if somebody handed me an oyster right now and didn't tell me how to do it, would I struggle like opening it up and cleaning it out?
Yeah, probably. Even you probably have shell in your meat too. So it's like the reverse of cracking an egg. You get the shell in your meat, and it's like, well, instead of it falling out of the egg, it falls into it, I guess, you know. So it's kind of the same deal.
I don't think we need to worry about me screwing that up because I don't plan on doing any clamming anytime soon. But yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, it's kind of hunting. Sounds like arrowhead hunting in a way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely can be, or shed hunting even.
Mm-hmm. Except those you don't bring any meat home.
That's true. But you do have a nice stack of them, so like, hey, look at all the sheds I got.
Yep, you bet. So on to the next segment. So we'll spend the next 10 minutes or so kind of reflecting on your journey. So sorry, listeners, I'm trying to put together some sort of structure here, and the transitions or segues aren't that great yet. But so looking at the journey to kind of how you got here, how did you become the hunter or the outdoorsman you did? Is it all how you were raised, or do you think the military had some impact on how you got where you are?
I would say it's my parents. A lot of people said that when I joined the army and then I came back on vacation, or even when I got out, I was still me. I never really changed much, to be honest. I was, thankful for my experiences, and I got to go travel all over the country, all over the world because of that. But I think my parents really just set the bedrock for me. Even my mom hunted. I mean, she was 4 months pregnant with me, and she shot a 4x4 bull elk with a bow.
Really?
Yeah, and she is just a tiny little Filipina lady. She could barely pull her bow back, and she ended up putting a good shot in, but uh, had to put another arrow in him, and she had to pull back using her feet to get the string back, and then transition to her hands to put another arrow in it. And I was like, I was basically born to do this one way or another through her experience, carrying me doing that, and then my dad just bringing me up in the world. And mom always supported it. It's like, yeah, go outside, go uh, be a provider for the family, even at a young age, whether that's meat or experience, for your next family. And that was probably like the biggest portion with it for me, to be honest. Obviously, the military brought like some structure to it, but I kind of already had it in some regards. You just make it more specific to whatever you're doing.
Did your mom hunt before she met your dad?
She was a farmer too.
Did she grow up in the country, or how'd that work?
Both of my sides of my family are immigrant families. My mom is direct. She was born, raised in the Philippines. Spent some time in some other countries in Southeast Asia, and then I met my dad through the old pen pal system, and rest is history. But she grew up like processing animals, taking care of animals, in that regard. So she was very accustomed to it, and even going out in the jungle in the Philippines and getting resources that way too.
Did you say pen pal?
Yeah, pen pal, the old like write a letter, it goes out to some random person, and that's how my mom and dad met.
Are you kidding me? I can't even meet somebody on a dating app.
Yeah, so that's how they met. Totally by happenstance, that a Finnish dude meets a Filipino woman via letters, and my dad is a first generation American, so I guess that would make me a first and a half generation American. I guess I don't know how that works out, but my dad's dad, so my grandpa, he came over to the country right at the turn of the century at 1890 something or whatever, and so they came over and they were hunters and farmers too. And so that's how my dad basically kept his family alive. And then when he was a kid, his brothers took care of him that way through hunting primarily. So
If you could go back and tell your younger hunter self one thing or teach yourself one thing, what would that be?
don't stop. There is, a couple points when you start out on any journey, you think like, do I really want to do this? Waking up early, getting all wet, getting cold, not coming home with anything. And then now I'm like, oh, whatever. I didn't come home with anything today. That means I get to try tomorrow, right? My dad's mentality, because he's mastered this over the 81 years of his life, is that just means I get to hunt more. So I think I'm getting there.
That brings in perfect transition to my next question. What separates a hunter from a killer?
I think it's the purpose. I think maybe a better way to even explain this could be when you see some guys in the military, they're just super hungry for combat. And those that have deployed are not necessarily wanting to deploy for the reasons of seeing combat, but more so for doing the job that needs to be done, and that's it. And so, relating that to hunting, it's like I'm out there to refine my skills, keep my fitness up, and potentially provide meat for me and my family. Now, the person that's out there for bloodlust is, I mean, they're no better than a poacher, in my opinion, to be honest, because that person will potentially poach. There's been huge poaching rings that have been busted in Oregon and Washington and Idaho the last couple of years. And these guys are just out there doing what? They're taking opportunity from other people. The meat's just being wasted. And they got a cool bunch of heads in their study or whatever. Like, great. You took it out of season using thermal. That's what's honorable, what's special about that? Nothing. Anyone with a couple $100 can go and do that.
And that's a killer.
I would say so. Yeah.
That's my definition. A hunter, it's about the purpose, the journey, the escape from reality. The killer, they don't care how it gets done as long as that trophy's on their wall. So, like, if I kill something on the first day, I'll be happy, but I'll also be disappointed that I don't get to hunt anymore the rest of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how I look at it too.
And the last question I have for you on this reflection section, maybe you already talked about it with your bears. One missed opportunity in the woods that still haunts you.
Well, honestly, I don't think it's been my bears. It was the first archery season I was back from being in the army. So this is early December, and it was just a miserable day. And I was much closer. I was in the swampland area of this coastal area I mentioned prior, and the wind was just right. I was in this nice salal patch, and salal is this year-round green leaf vegetable that deer and elk eat all the time. And I've been stalking this bull for a number of weeks now, and I finally caught up with him, and he just starts moseying his way toward me. And at first, I see him; he's 80 yards away, and I mean, it's the vegetation is thick. There's multiple layers of vine maple, which is this thick, woody tree that grows like a vine, but it just hangs sideways. So it's blocking my shooting alley, and he's just walking toward me, nice and casual. Wind's completely in my favor. I smell him and his buddy, and this Roosevelt was probably the biggest 5 by 5 I've ever seen, which I know there's bigger animals out there, but in terms of a 5 by 5, very mature, just very stacked on for the weight. And I try to get as close as I could or change the angle so that way I could get a shooting loop through all this vegetation. And I end up getting about 22 yards away from this bull, and I had to crawl on my face, dragging my bow on my back, to get to that distance because there was just this other big Douglas fir next to me. I got around that Douglas fir and I nocked my arrow, pull back, and I already pre-ranged that distance, so I knew it would be about 20 yards. I stand up, and all I see is his hind quarter, and there was a bush that was blocking the front half of him, and just a random bush, like I think maybe a tall holly bush at best. And I was like, I can't make this shot. There's no way I can make this shot and not think it's ethical anyway. Shooting in the butt definitely ain't gonna do it, and gut shotting ain't gonna do it either. And those vitals are just all covered by this relatively thin tree that I was yeah, if I had a chance if I had to be a betting man, I think the arrow would go through and fly pretty true because he was just on the other side of it. But nope, and he just walked away, and there was nothing I could do about it.
Would you have taken that shot looking back now?
No, no way. There was just no way. I maybe the one thing I might have changed was starting crawling maybe 5 seconds sooner, 10 seconds sooner before that decision came on, but that was a point where I saw him, and I was just leaned up against the tree, checking wind, and I saw him coming through, and I just stood there, and he probably looked at me a dozen times and paid no attention, so I was just standing perfectly still. And if I would have started moving just a little bit sooner, maybe, then maybe I would have had an actual shot. But there was just no way I was going to loop my arrow through all those layers of vine maple. Just no way.
That's the ethical way of doing it.
Yeah. You miss out on a nice bull like that. And I'm sure the other guys I was competing with probably ended up getting him a little bit later because I stopped seeing their truck 2 days later. So, uh, oh well, good for them. It was a hard area to hunt in for sure.
We all have them, those stories, don't we?
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, we wrap this up. You're the second person to run through this segment, so I'll refine this as we go. I don't know if you
Nice.
looked at this segment or not, but for our listeners, we're doing 5 rapid fire questions. We don't need an explanation. You can touch on it a little bit if you want. We're going to do 5 questions, rapid fire, go. Oh, you need the question. Best hunting gear purchase you've ever made?
Ooh. In the last 3 years, I bought a new bino harness for me because I was using my whole army, fighting load carrier because I decided to keep it. I just paid the fine because I was very sentimental to me. I've been using that for a number of years, and I decided I'm gonna slim down, and I got the, uh, Eberly stock B series, I think is what it's called, and that's been money, especially out here in the colder years. Colder months, I can put the hand warmer underneath it. I like warm hands.
Comes in handy for coyote hunting too.
Absolutely. I have my little collar in there, and I'm just filtering through options as my hands stay warm. And I don't have to be moving around and fiddling with stuff, at least in the open. So I appreciate that.
One trick to try to keep hands warm, you can ask that Department of Natural Resource officer, whatever, for some of those rubber gloves. Something I want to try. You wear those, keep your hands warm. Learned it from running TikTok, so I might try it someday.
Mm.
Okay, next question. Most gimmicky hunting purchase you've ever made?
Made shoot.
That you bought into the hype and it's like, this is pointless.
I don't know. I'm a pretty bare bones hunter, to be honest. I really am. I think I did buy a rain jacket one time. That was a very unique camo pattern just for the camo pattern. And it was still a good rain jacket and I still use it, but it was like a a Czechoslovakian army surplus rain jacket that was like way more money than it needed to be. But you know what? I still use it. It's a great rain jacket and it folds up into a really small space.
Bought
But I
into
didn't
the
need to
hype,
spend that
huh?
money on it. It's a very cool camo pattern.
There we go. Hunting luck versus skill percentage. Where do they fall?
I'm gonna say 65-35. 65% skill, 35% luck.
Interesting. Most controversial hunting take.
Ooh. Yeah, this is a good one. Don't be fat.
Did I hear you right?
Don't be fat.
Eat your meat, boys.
Get some exercise in. Get some exercise in. It's going to make your life exponentially easier, whether you're in the field, in the tree stand, doing your day job, go touch grass, or lift weights, whatever it is.
Most underrated hunting tactic.
Thermals.
Thermals. There you go, man. Good job. We'll wrap this up with a couple of embarrassing stories and I'll let you get back to the young boys.
Oh, you want me to drop one, huh?
One or two? Yep.
Okay. Um, oh, this one's a good one. I was 15. I just got my learner's permit and my dad just started teaching me to drive and we're driving in the woods, right? Because there's a lot less people around. You only got to worry about the crazy log truck drivers and that's it. I forget to turn the truck on all the way and we're on a downhill slope. And so, uh, we start coasting really, really fast. And my dad's telling me to pump the brakes. And I'm standing on the brakes and, I end up parking the truck ever so carefully against a tree. And as I park the truck against the tree, a covey, which is a group of grouse, ends up popping out from the other side of it. And so I am door jammed against two trees on the driver's side, and my dad is uh, on the shotgun. And he's like, well, the truck ain't moving, so I'm getting these grouse. And so I'm stuck in the truck, and he pulls the shotgun out, and I hear bang, bang. And he comes back with, hey, look at these grouse I got. I'm glad you're a horrible driver.
Really?
And then what happened was, I think I bumped the ignition and I ended up turning the truck off or something like that is what happened. So you didn't have the full power brakes and everything like that. So literally the first time I ever got behind a wheel, I parked the truck against the tree, lose out on some grouse, and now my dad will, ever so slightly ever just remind me of that.
Driving lessons 101.
There you go. Let's think of another one here. I think the other one, and this is more so of like a good reminder of having good friends. Not necessarily embarrassing, I guess, but when you arrow an animal pretty good and you can't find it, having good friends helps a long way and goes a long way for that. But it also helps to have friends that aren't colorblind or that aren't colorblind because a lot of my friends are for whatever reason. And so I realized that halfway through, I asked him to come out into the deep of the woods. Hey, can you help me look for this deer? And then I realized halfway through, like, oh crap, a third of y'all are colorblind. And it's 2 at night. We're walking around with, flashlights from our phone, construction site battery powered lights, headlights from our truck, everything in that we can. And I'm just wasting everyone's time. They got work tomorrow morning and, some of them get up super early. Some of them got up at 3 hours later, just enough time to get home, shower, take a cat nap and wake up for the next day. I'm like, I'm sorry guys. I should have, planned this a little better, but have good friends, but then also maybe some ones that aren't colorblind either. So
Did you find it?
that was the one animal I have shot and never recovered that I knew I shot anyway. And that was a reminder to me. This was for bow season. And what happened with that bow is 3 days later, the strings actually exploded in my closet. And I had shot it all year, confirmed zero every time before I shot when I could, when I was shooting it every week. And that day, cams were off, scored the string, and that's what led that animal to my arrow to pull, about 4 inches to the right, and it was quarter toward me a little bit. So quarter toward you, pull 4 inches to the right. It's a gut shot for sure. Um, and yeah, so check your stuff. That's a good reminder for me. And now I got a new bow. I'm shooting that thing in the off season every other week at least, if not doing some garage shooting and just making sure I'm on it and checking my strengths. A little more paranoid now. So I'm glad that's the only animal that I've had to, potentially lose out on for that lesson to be learned. Some people might take a little bit more. So
We've all been there.
yeah.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you joining. It's been fun getting a different perspective. It's harder to get people out west than it is on the East Coast for some reason.
Huh. I I don't know. The hunting community out here is pretty strong in a lot of sense, but I think It seems strong because it's more maybe excluded to just West Coast hunters or Cascade hunters or Rocky hunters. I don't know.
More private,
Uh,
maybe.
I guess I don't know. Hunting's hunting to me. I don't care. Like I've talked to people all over the world doing different kinds of hunting. I've been thankful to have that opportunity. I'm like, man, that's really cool. And I just think it's just so interesting different availability we have to be out in the woods and take advantage of it, whether it's, blacktail, whitetail, Rockies, Rosies, clam digging, even fishing, doesn't matter. I just like being outside.
All right, man. Well, you have a good night, and hopefully we'll stay in touch.
Definitely. Thanks, Mitchell.
You bet. See you, buddy.